What happens when one of Hollywood's most celebrated actresses finds herself facing a television host whose questions cross the line from curiosity into personal criticism? What began as an ordinary interview quickly turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments anyone in the studio could remember. Today's story follows an intense on-air clash between Kate Winslet and Joy Behar, a confrontation that sparked debate about professionalism, respect, and the way successful women are often judged in the entertainment industry. As emotions rose and the discussion took an unexpected direction, the atmosphere shifted from friendly conversation to undeniable tension. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. How would you have handled a situation like this? The atmosphere inside the studio felt energetic as Kate Winslet walked onto the set of The View. Fresh from the success of her latest critically praised film, she had arrived expecting a relaxed conversation about her work, her career, and the message behind her newest project. No one, neither the audience nor the production team, anticipated that the interview would soon become the center of an uncomfortable confrontation. "Welcome back to The View, everyone," Whoopi Goldberg announced with her trademark warmth. "Today we're joined by the incredibly talented Kate Winslet, whose newest performance is already receiving outstanding reviews." Kate greeted the audience with a gracious smile before taking her seat. Calm, confident, and effortlessly composed, she thanked the hosts for inviting her. "It's lovely to be here," she said. "Thank you so much for having me." The opening minutes unfolded exactly as expected. Sarah Haynes asked thoughtful questions about Kate's preparation for the role, while Sunny Host praised the film's emotional depth and social relevance. Kate answered with honesty and enthusiasm, speaking passionately about storytelling, character development, and the responsibility actors have when portraying meaningful subjects. Everything appeared to be going smoothly. Then Joy Behar leaned forward with a knowing smile, a look longtime viewers recognized as the beginning of a far more challenging conversation. "So, Kate," Joy began casually, "there's something I've been wondering." Kate nodded politely. "You've been working in Hollywood for decades now," Joy continued. "Do you ever think about how the kinds of roles available to actresses change over time?" The audience listened carefully. Kate answered thoughtfully. "I think every stage of life offers different opportunities," she replied. "What matters most is finding characters with depth and stories worth telling." But Joy wasn't finished. "Some people would argue," she continued, "that audiences expect younger actresses in romantic leading roles. Do you think there comes a point when performers should step aside and leave those roles to the next generation?" A noticeable silence settled over the studio. Kate paused for a moment before responding. "I'm not entirely sure I agree with that assumption," she said calmly. Joy pressed further. "Isn't there a certain reality to aging in Hollywood? Shouldn't actors eventually accept that some roles simply aren't meant for them anymore?" Several people exchanged uneasy glances. Whoopi shifted in her chair, sensing that the conversation was drifting into uncomfortable territory. Before she could redirect the discussion, Joy continued. "I'm just asking the question many viewers might be thinking." The audience remained unusually quiet as Kate maintained her composure, choosing her words carefully despite the growing tension. Kate responded with measured confidence. "I believe stories should be judged by their honesty and emotional impact, not by assumptions about an actor's age." She explained that her latest character reflected the experiences of an adult woman navigating complex personal challenges, making age an essential part of the story rather than something to avoid. Joy remained unconvinced. "But don't you think Hollywood sometimes struggles to move on?" she asked. "Some critics say the industry is reluctant to let established stars step away from traditional leading roles." Kate offered a small smile. "I see it differently," she replied. "Every generation deserves meaningful stories, and audiences connect with authenticity far more than arbitrary expectations." Whoopi finally stepped in. "I think it's important to remember we're talking about an artist discussing her work." Kate nodded appreciatively before continuing. I came here to talk about a film centered on resilience, identity, and human relationships. Those themes don't belong to any particular age group. The audience applauded softly, while several of the hosts appeared relieved that the discussion had returned to the subject of the film. Even so, the tension remained. After a brief pause, Kate asked a question of her own. "Can I ask something?" Joy nodded. If a male actor with a long career accepted a romantic leading role, would the same concerns be raised? The question lingered in the air. Kate continued. We often celebrate experienced male actors for their longevity and screen presence. Yet conversations about women frequently focus on age before talent. Why do you think that is? The studio fell completely silent. Even members of the production crew seemed absorbed by the exchange. Joy considered her response before offering her perspective, while the audience watched closely, recognizing that the discussion had grown beyond a single film or interview. It had become a larger conversation about expectations, opportunity, and whether the standards applied to men and women in entertainment are truly the same. Kate remained calm and composed, waiting patiently as everyone in the studio anticipated what would be said next. Kate took a slow breath before responding. When she finally spoke, her voice remained calm, but the emotion beneath it was impossible to miss. That's one of the most outdated perspectives I've heard in a very long time, she said. And hearing it come from another woman makes it even more disappointing. Joy gave a dismissive shrug. Oh, please. Don't lecture me about sexism, she replied. I've been speaking out about those issues for decades. Then why reinforce those same stereotypes? Kate asked, no longer hiding her frustration. Why suggest that an actress somehow loses her value simply because she's getting older? Why reduce years of dedication and hard work to a conversation about appearance instead of talent? Joy immediately pushed back. That's not what I'm saying, she insisted. I'm talking about realism. No, Kate answered firmly. You're talking about age discrimination and double standards. And you're doing it while I'm sitting here trying to discuss my work. The atmosphere in the studio became noticeably heavier. Even the audience, which had been reacting throughout the interview, fell silent. Whoopi glanced between the two women, clearly searching for a way to ease the growing tension before it escalated even further. Instead, Joy folded her arms. If you can't handle honest criticism, she said, maybe public interviews aren't for you. Kate stared at her in disbelief. Honest criticism, she repeated. For the past several minutes you've questioned my professionalism, my career, and my personal worth. That's not constructive criticism. She paused before adding quietly. That's simply unkind. Joy let out a short laugh. You've spent too much time in Hollywood, she replied. Sometimes people need to hear uncomfortable truths. Kate looked genuinely surprised by the remark. Is that really how you see this? She asked. Joy nodded without hesitation. I think Hollywood protects its biggest stars, she said. Nobody wants to have these conversations. Sarah Haynes attempted to redirect the discussion, but Kate gently raised a hand. No, she said. I'd like to understand. Turning back toward Joy, she continued. What exactly is the point you're trying to make? Joy leaned back confidently. My point is simple. Hollywood has become obsessed with youth, and instead of challenging that culture, established stars often benefit from it. Younger performers struggle to find opportunities while the same names continue getting the biggest roles. Kate listened carefully before responding. So you're suggesting that I'm somehow preventing younger actresses from succeeding? Joy didn't hesitate. I'm saying experienced actors have influence. They could make different choices. Kate shook her head. That's not how casting works, she replied. Roles are offered because filmmakers believe someone fits a character. It's not a competition where one actress steals a part from another. Joy remained unconvinced. I think the industry needs more room for new talent. Kate answered calmly. I agree that new talent deserves opportunities. But supporting emerging artists doesn't require experienced performers to stop working. For a brief moment, neither woman spoke. The silence hanging over the studio was almost as powerful as the exchange itself. Whoopi finally leaned forward. I think we're drifting away from why Kate joined us today. Kate nodded. I'd actually like to respond, she said, never taking her eyes off Joy. You seem very confident about my career decisions, so let me explain one of them. The audience listened intently. The film we're discussing today wasn't chosen because it was the biggest project available. I accepted it because I believed in the story. It was directed by a first-time female filmmaker, and many of the key creative positions were filled by talented young women building their careers. She paused before continuing. My goal has never been to stand in anyone's way. It's been to support meaningful stories while helping create opportunities for others whenever I can. For the first time since the argument began, Joy hesitated. Still, she wasn't ready to concede. One project doesn't answer every criticism, she replied. Kate met her gaze without raising her voice. No, she said. But it does show that assumptions about people are rarely as accurate as they seem. Kate's voice grew steadier with every word. Throughout my career, I've chosen projects because they challenged me as an artist and told stories that mattered, she said. I've supported independent films, collaborated with emerging filmmakers, and done everything I can to encourage new voices in this industry. She paused before looking directly at Joy. So why has this conversation become about questioning my character instead of discussing my work? Joy folded her arms. I don't have to defend my career to anyone. Kate nodded. And yet you've spent this entire interview expecting me to defend mine. The audience remained silent. You've questioned my age, my decisions, and my integrity, Kate continued. I'd genuinely like to understand why. What exactly are you trying to prove? Joy answered without hesitation. Because someone has to ask difficult questions. Someone has to challenge the way Hollywood operates. Kate leaned forward. And what, exactly, is the hypocrisy you're talking about? Joy replied confidently. The industry pretends age doesn't matter, when everyone knows it does. Kate let out a quiet sigh. I've never claimed age doesn't matter, she said. What I've said is that good stories exist for people of every age. Joy waved her hand dismissively. You know what I mean. Kate shook her head. No, I really don't. Her voice remained composed, but her disappointment was unmistakable. You haven't asked me about the film, the character, or the message behind the story. Instead, you've made assumptions about my career based entirely on stereotypes. The audience began murmuring, sensing the discussion had moved far beyond a normal interview. I'm not attacking you, Joy insisted. We're simply having an honest conversation. Kate looked at her for a long moment. An honest conversation. She spoke carefully, making every word count. I accepted this invitation expecting to discuss a project that means a great deal to me. Instead, the focus has been on my age, my career, and my personal choices. She glanced around the studio before continuing. That's not a conversation about art. It's a conversation about assumptions. Joy crossed her arms. You're taking this far too personally. Kate answered immediately. No. I'm responding to the way this interview has unfolded. The room fell silent once again. Whoopi looked ready to step in, while Sunny and Sarah exchanged uneasy glances. Kate continued. Respectful interviews challenge ideas. They don't rely on personal attacks. Joy's expression hardened. So now you're accusing me of being disrespectful. I'm saying the tone of this discussion has become unnecessarily hostile, Kate replied calmly. There's a difference between asking difficult questions and making someone feel unwelcome. Joy leaned forward. This is television. Tough interviews are part of the job. Kate met her gaze without hesitation. Tough interviews examine the work. This conversation has barely mentioned the work at all. Several audience members applauded softly. Kate continued. I came here excited to speak about a film I'm incredibly proud of. Instead, I've spent most of this interview defending things that have nothing to do with the project. She paused. I honestly have to ask, why? Joy shrugged. That's how these conversations sometimes go. Kate stared at her for a moment, almost surprised by the answer. So this was intentional. I intended to have an honest discussion, Joy replied. If that made you uncomfortable, I can't help that. Kate slowly shook her head. No, she said. Honesty and respect should never be opposites. Her voice grew firmer. What disappoints me most isn't that you challenged me. It's that you chose to make the conversation about tearing someone down instead of learning something from them. The studio remained completely still as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Kate's expression hardened, her composure giving way to unmistakable determination. Tough questions, she repeated. Questions about my creative process, the challenges of the role, or why I chose this project. Those would be tough questions. She paused, her voice calm but unwavering. What we've had instead is a series of personal judgments disguised as an interview. Joy dismissed the comment with a wave of her hand. That's the problem with Hollywood, she replied. Successful actors get so used to praise that they can't handle criticism. Kate's eyes never left hers. I wasn't expecting praise, she answered quietly. I was expecting courtesy. The audience remained silent. I came here prepared to discuss my work. I expected the same level of respect any guest deserves. Apparently, that expectation was unrealistic. Joy leaned forward. Do you know what I think your real problem is? Kate waited. You've spent so much time surrounded by people who agree with you that you've forgotten how to hear an opposing opinion. Kate slowly stood, the sound of her chair scraping across the studio floor drawing every eye toward her. My problem, she said evenly, isn't disagreement. She looked directly at Joy. My problem is the hostility that's been present since the moment this interview began. Joy gestured toward the chair. We're not finished. Kate remained standing. I think we are. She took a measured breath before continuing. I don't know what kind of conversation you intended to have today, but this stopped being an interview a long time ago. Joy shook her head. You're proving exactly what I was talking about. Kate answered without hesitation. If defending myself after repeated personal attacks makes me appear difficult, then I'm comfortable with that. Whoopi finally rose from her chair, hoping to calm the growing tension before it reached an irreversible point. Ladies, Whoopi said gently, let's bring this back under control. Kate glanced briefly toward her before turning back to Joy. I want everyone here to understand why this has reached this point. Her voice echoed across the suddenly silent studio. I accepted this invitation believing we would have a thoughtful discussion about a project that means a great deal to me. She paused. Instead, I've spent nearly the entire interview defending myself against assumptions that have nothing to do with my work. Joy stood as well. So now you think this is personal? Kate met her gaze. I honestly don't know. She continued. But it's difficult to understand why any guest would be treated this way. Joy folded her arms. Someone has to challenge celebrities. Kate nodded. And there's nothing wrong with asking challenging questions. She took a step closer. The problem is when challenging questions become personal accusations. The audience watched without making a sound. This hasn't been a conversation about filmmaking, Kate continued. It's become an argument built on assumptions rather than facts. Joy's frustration became increasingly visible. You don't know anything about me, she replied. Kate answered calmly. I know what I've experienced during this interview. She continued in a measured tone. I know what it feels like to have my work overshadowed by personal criticism. I know what it feels like to spend an entire conversation defending things that were never the reason I came here. Behind the cameras, producers exchanged worried looks while the other hosts remained visibly uncomfortable. Joy finally raised her voice. How dare you question my professionalism? Kate didn't flinch. Experience should raise the standard, she replied. Not lower it. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. The studio was completely silent. Kate looked around the set one final time before reaching for the microphone clipped to her jacket. She carefully removed it and placed it on the table. I think it's best if I leave. Joy looked stunned. So you're walking out? Kate nodded. I'm choosing to end a conversation that stopped being productive quite some time ago. She picked up her notes and offered a polite glance toward the other hosts. Thank you to everyone who welcomed me today. Then she turned back to Joy. I genuinely hope future guests have a very different experience. Without another word, Kate walked away from the table. The audience watched in stunned silence as she headed toward the exit. No one moved. No one spoke. The cameras continued rolling, capturing the uneasy expressions around the table as producers hurried behind the scenes, uncertain how the interview had unraveled so completely. The moment would linger long after the studio lights dimmed, leaving viewers to draw their own conclusions about everything they had just witnessed. Kate paused near the edge of the stage and slowly turned toward the audience. For a moment, the studio was completely silent. Looking directly into the cameras, she spoke with quiet sincerity. I want to apologize to everyone watching at home, she said. Many of you tuned in expecting a conversation about filmmaking, storytelling, and the creative process. Instead, you've witnessed an interview that took a very different direction. She paused before continuing. I truly wish this discussion had focused on the work rather than personal disagreements. The audience listened without interruption. Kate then turned back toward Joy one final time. I hope that, one day, conversations like this can be guided by mutual respect even when people strongly disagree. Joy, still visibly frustrated, called after her. So you're just walking away? Kate stopped briefly but didn't return to the table. I'm choosing to end a conversation that is no longer productive, she replied calmly. She offered a polite nod to the other hosts before continuing toward the exit. As she reached the edge of the set, she glanced back one last time. I genuinely wish everyone here the very best. With those words, Kate quietly walked off the stage. For several long seconds, the studio remained frozen. The audience looked from the hosts to the empty chair where Kate had been sitting, unsure how to react. Whoopi finally broke the silence. We'll take a short commercial break, she announced, doing her best to restore order to the broadcast. Behind the scenes, producers hurried across the studio while the remaining hosts gathered themselves after an interview that had taken an unexpected turn. Whether viewers believed Kate was right to leave or felt the discussion should have continued, one thing was undeniable: the interview had shifted from promoting a film to sparking a much larger conversation about professionalism, respect, and the way difficult conversations are handled in public. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, people were still debating the exchange and what it revealed about the challenges of balancing honest questions with respectful dialogue. What do you think? Was Kate right to end the interview and walk away, or should she have stayed and continued the conversation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories and discussions.